Welcome to a ride on the outside. MMA is full of people on the inside, but what about the ones that watch from beyond? Welcome to the MMA Outsiders with Tom Albano and Zain Bando on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
Yes, it's another edition of the MMA Outsiders. That's Zain Bando. Albano, welcome to episode 28. And Zain, we're coming off of one big weekend that was chock full of combat sports, MMA, boxing events all throughout the weekend. And now we're coming up, Zain, on another big weekend that features, well, a long-awaited return, Zain, of one Jon Jones, at one point considered the most best pound-for-pound athlete in the sport of mixed martial arts. I know everybody's rejoicing with the Jake Paul-Tommy Fury result. So much madness going on in combat sports. It's a very busy time right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the time of this recording, thankfully, there has been no negative news about Jon Jones. Knock on wood, this will be airing on Wednesday morning. So hopefully this entire thing doesn't blow up in flames by the time we're done talking about this. But yeah,
Well, I've done the knock. I'm on wood right now. So
we'll have that to talk about. But before we get into all of the news and notes in combat sports for this week, as we are approaching the month of March, it's crazy to even think about that. Make sure to like and subscribe. Share the MMA Outsiders social media. Share Empty the Bench across social media. You can follow Empty the Bench Network at ETB Network. You can follow myself at ZanBando99 on Instagram and Twitter. And you can find my work at bjapen.com. I have a few new pieces coming out this week. You can find Tom's work over at Advanced MMA, where he does a continuously great job covering anything and everything that is fight night. So if you want to find out all of that, you can find his work there. You can find him at Thomas J. Albano and at Tom Talk Sports 9. Now that that's out of the way, Tom, let's go into his fight. So obviously Tommy Fury scoring a split decision win over Jake Paul in a very closely contested fight, a fight that had a lot of hype behind it, a fight that's been rescheduled several times, a fight that was dubbed The Truth. So the truth of the matter is that Tommy Fury did take care of business. He did win the fight, and he won it kind of by beating Jake Paul at his own game. I thought he dominated most of the fight pretty easily and didn't really have too many issues besides the 8th round knockdown. And even the point deductions didn't phase him at all. Overall, I thought the fight was really good. He used his distance well. He used his range well. He caught Jake Paul with several nice shots, got him in difficult situations, tried to confuse him with wrestling, which you obviously can't do in boxing. And that kind of threw him off the second the fight started. And even though the referee was a little bit questionable at times, I do think that it was just enough to let the two guys fight. And it ended up being a great fight. And just overall fight that I thought lived up to all expectations and was not kind of the joke that people were setting it out to be. It was actually a very entertaining fight, a well-played fight by both, and a fight that I thought lived up to the billing, even though there was no knockout or anything like that. So overall, I did think that Fury did enough to win the fight, and I thought 76-73 was the right scorecard somewhere in there. I could argue 75-74 for Paul, but outside of those two scorecards, I think that I just did get this one right, having 2 out of the 3 say that Tommy Fury had won. So overall, what did you think of the fight? Did you agree with the scorecard? And would you be interested in seeing a potential rematch between these two now rivals, if you will?
So yes, I did agree with the judges. I actually had scored the fight. I think I had scored 5-3 in terms of rounds in favor of Fury. Zain, I think you kind of nailed it. I was talking about it during the MMA Outsiders Moment of Mayhem that dropped on Monday morning. That Jake Paul you said that Jake Paul was being at his own game. I think that, well, it's not that I think. Jake Paul was facing an actual boxer for the first time. He was not facing some celebrity that was doing boxing like he was. He was not facing a washed up MMA fighter, let alone a washed-up MMA fighter facing a legitimate boxer, a young, legitimate boxer who, mind you, Zan is also the younger half-brother of the WBC heavyweight champion and arguably one of the best boxers in this sport today, Tyson Fury. Tommy Fury took control of that fight from the get-go. He kind of needed to, and I think he established that by got the job done. You had him coming out right away, trying to get control, trying to display the power, and threw shots wildly. Well, not wildly, but threw shots, worked his jab, and tried to throw Jake Paul off his game. I know there was a lot of complaining about too much grappling, as you can kind of say, too much clinch work. And, well, I mean, Zan, I kind of have seen worse fights with the clinch work.
Yeah, one of them that comes to mind, in my opinion, you'd have to go all the way back to over a decade ago when Floyd Mayweather fought Victor Ortiz. That would probably be one of the worst displays of clinch work that anyone's ever seen, and one of the most controversial endings to a boxing match that people can remember. One that Dana White had a legendary, infamous rant about, where he not only ripped Joe Cortez's officiating, but also ripped what Larry Merchant asked Floyd Mayweather after the fight in a very famous one-liner that if he was 50 years younger, he kicked Floyd Mayweather's ass. There was nothing remotely the same at the end of the Jake Paul Tommy Fury festivities, but that was the first fight that could come to mind where I thought the clinch work really dictated the story of the fight, and you could argue that this one in a lot of ways also dictated the story of Paul versus Fury. So that would be how I would compare those two. But nonetheless, both of their stocks rose tremendously, as you had alluded to the other day when we were not on the air and we were having some technical issues. That that these two, it's going to be interesting to see how these two did on pay-per-view, given that it was a Sunday afternoon card, given that there was a lot more on that they were competing with, college basketball being one thing, a bunch of NBA. It'll be interesting to see how the pay-per-view did. But overall, I thought it was a success for Saudi Arabia, and they got what they were looking for.
Yeah, for certain. As I was alluding to before with my match recap, so you had Tommy Fury coming out. You had him taking control of the fight right away. As you mentioned, Stan, worked his range and worked his distance. He did a lot of moving around the ring, did a lot of circling around the ring, trying to ensure that he wouldn't be in one place, that he would kind of confuse Jake Paul. He did stop doing that and paid for it dearly in the third round because Paul got some nasty shots on him in that round. But then in the next round, he picked back up where he was. They did each have the 1 point deduction. Jake Paul got deducted a point in round 5. Tommy Fury got deducted a point in round 6. And I mean, excessive grappling on Fury's end and the rapid punching on Paul's end. I mean, yes, technically those are fouls, and yes, technically you are, after enough you take a point. But I don't know. I thought this referee Zan, you kind of was a little too trigger happy. Well, I think I made the comparison in the MMA moment of mayhem. It was kind of like a lost child or some deer in the headlights. He didn't look like he had any idea what he was doing. Basically being the third man in the ring during a pretty big fight. Now, granted, this isn't a championship fight. It's not a number one contenders fight between two of the most legitimate boxers in the world. It's Jake Paul and Tommy Fury. But nevertheless, it's still a pay-per-view main event that people are paying to see. And we'll find out how much. We should find out how many pay-per-view buys, how well this did on pay-per-view. I think we're going to get very limited numbers, however, because this was an ESPN Plus pay-per-view card, and ESPN Plus generally does not give out any sort of information when it comes to the purchases of pay-per-views. Other than that, Zan, I mean, Fury just landed the harder punches. He landed the better, to borrow a term from MMA judging, more effective striking. So I think the judges are right. I was scared when that knockdown happened because I said, okay, this is going to allow for either because it would be a 10-8 round, it would allow for either a Paul to sneak out a victory or at the very least a draw. But other than that, I thought the judges got it right. Thank goodness. As far as if I want to see a rematch, I mean, it looks like Paul's all for a rematch. I know they've been throwing some other names out there, Zan. I know KSI has been talking a lot of crap. KSI has fought Jake's brother Logan on a couple of occasions. Nate Diaz popping his head in, saying that he wants to fight him. He kind of hinted when Nate did his last UFC fight that he wanted to fight Jake Paul. Also, there's also, speaking of speaking of Nate Diaz, an MMA star, there is also, Dan, the fact that Jake Paul has signed a deal with the PFL and he's training for a mixed martial arts debut.
Yeah, that's also a good point. After that PFL video was released, kind of the talks of that whole thing died down. But it's going to be interesting to see, if they continue to move forward with that and if he still remains an ambassador for them and actually competes in their super fight division. Because if he does, I think it will draw a lot of intrigue. No matter what, though, even in the loss, his stock rose because people watched the fight and they definitely cared about it. Oh, there's no way that Jake Paul loses any sort of popularity in any way. I think this might be a win-win for him. And then obviously Tyson Fury revealed the other day to multiple sources that Tommy got $4 million for this fight, so he's going home with a happy payday.
Yeah, a win and $4 million. That's a very happy day at the office for one Tommy Fury. As far as Jake Paul goes about his stock not dropping, I mean, there is an argument for that. There is also an argument that Mark Raimondi of ESPN, Nick Baldwin of The Score have put out that they think that Jake Paul is now in a situation after a loss like this and saying he wants a rematch and all that Jake Paul can't afford a loss in his next fight. That losing his next fight, dropping 2 straight, might be devastating, might be the end of his professional boxing career. I don't know if I would go with that last point, considering that, the Paul brothers. I mean, Dylan Rush kind of said it when he joined us about a month ago that Jake Paul, the Paul brothers have brought more eyes onto the sport, whether we like it or not, whether purists like it or not. So I don't know if I'd say boxing career is ruined, but I do think 2 losses in a row, a loss here and a loss in a potential rematch to Fury, or whether it be a loss to, say, a KSI or somebody, might hurt. What do you think?
I don't agree with that for a second. I think as long as Jake Paul steps in the ring, people are going to buy his fights. I think his charisma outweighs his actual fighting style and what he does outside the ring. And I think he's not a Conor McGregor, but he's a version of him where, Conor McGregor can fight anyone and people will pay to see it because he's Conor McGregor. He's become that big of a superstar that it doesn't matter who he fights. If people see the name McGregor on the top of the bill, some eyebrows raised. And I think Jake Paul has slowly but surely gotten to the point where no matter who Jake Paul was in the ring against, people are gonna pay to see it. So no, I don't agree with Raimondi or Baldwin in saying that the end of his boxing career is near if he loses 2 in a row. Does it diminish some bigger fights that he could have in the future if he doesn't win his next fight? Sure, but to completely dismiss that his career is over, I don't buy that for a second. He's still one of the biggest stars in all of boxing. Hell, had he won this fight, he would have been ranked by the WBC for crying out loud. If that doesn't say something, then I don't know what does. No matter if you agree with that decision by the WBC or whether you don't, that goes to show that the WBC wants to invest money in him. They want to see him, fight these marquee fights. No matter if you think he deserves them or not, he's doing things that other boxers at the moment, at least since Floyd Mayweather, have been unable to do. And as much as I don't like Jake Paul and as much as I've never been a fan of his whole gimmick, as soon as I learned that, he's taking this very seriously and he has all of these ambitious goals and he's doing everything he said that he would do, it's hard not to discount, if you will. It's not hard to see where he's coming from because truly he wants to make a career out of it, no matter if you like him or you don't. And I think as long as he's putting butts in seats, that's really all he cares about, because he's just watching the money roll in. And honestly, at his age, who can blame him? So, yeah.
So you brought up the name Conor McGregor, Zan, and I'm gonna throw out this question because you threw out this question when we tried to record the first time and had technical difficulties, Zan. So if Conor McGregor loses his next fight to Michael Chandler, do you think there is a chance, especially if Jake Paul is able to get a win back in his next fight, no matter if it takes place around the same time as McGregor versus Chandler, or if it takes place at the end of the year, if Paul is able to get a victory in his next fight, rebound from this loss, McGregor loses his next fight to Chandler, which we've already established last week we think is a bit of a must win for him. Do you think then eventually we will see Conor McGregor versus Jake Paul?
It's a good question. And I think there's only one man that can determine that, and that is Mr. Baldfather himself, Dana White. And I think
Baldfather, I love that.
And I think if Mr. Dana White can figure out the right amount of money that he's going to get from this deal, he's going to do it. Because remember, and I'm gonna keep saying it until I'm blue in the face. He always said for years that he would never get into the boxing business. And once the right deal came around for Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor to lock horns, and that whole saga started, he was all in, and he tried to say, "Oh, I never said any of that." Blah, blah, blah. Well, he had said for years that he was never going to get into the boxing business. I promise you, because Dana White's always been about top dollar for maybe about a decade or so. That's how he's operated, whether you like it or not. If he can get the right number for those two to step into a boxing ring, whether it's an exhibition, a pro boxing match, whatever, he will do it, and he will go out and he will go on his little media crusade, and he will say that he never said any of those things, even though we know it's a bunch of bullshit because people have receipts about it. But I promise you, if he's given the right number, that fight will happen some hours way under his watch, and he and MVP can go to war on a co-promotion clause, if you will.
Zen, I'm just like sitting here and thinking about it. I mean, you're talking about co-promotion. I mean, I think an MMA card is out of the picture because I don't see him doing business with Jake Paul now being signed to the Professional Fighters League. And we've already talked about Dana and his lack of trying to do co-promotions. You had mentioned the other day, Zan, while we were talking about how Jake Paul has been kind of dropped by Showtime. This was his first fight with ESPN Plus pay-per-view. He had been with Showtime and Triller prior to this. And the first couple of fights, and like Askren and the Woodley fight, 500,000 pay-per-view buys each, plus. And then the last couple of ones, the rematch with Woodley, the Silva fight, only about 200 to 300,000. So now you're looking at, I mean, whatever. Again, it's kind of frustrating. Like, not just with this fight, but with all of the pay-per-view cards in general, how ESPN Plus just doesn't give the information about pay-per-view purchases, unless, of course, it's something really big that they want to promote, like when Conor McGregor fights. On that note, however, yeah, you're right. Dana has said before he wouldn't get into boxing. He tried with Zuffa boxing, Zan, and then he kind of learned the hard way that the pay structure that he wants to have, like in the UFC, is not going to fly when it comes to having to deal with the athletic commissions and the Ali Act.
Tom, I'm going to stop you right there. Did he really try with Zuffa boxing? Because I would argue he barely tried.
Yeah, very fair point. He barely tried. Barely got it off the ground.
He got a T-shirt out of it, and that was about it. And it's a T-shirt that few people even still own.
It's going to be, Zan, Zuffa boxing is going to be a relic in combat sports, just like on the same level that Golden Boy MMA was.
Yeah. Although putting Golden Boy MMA in the same category as Zuffa boxing is hilarious in itself.
I know, because it's Dana and Oscar De La Hoya.
Right.
Actually, Zan, hold on. I have a message here from Dana about what you said. Trying to what's it called? Trying to do co-promotion, getting into the boxing and letting McGregor Paul happen here.
No, you moron.
So, Zan, I know he's basically said a lot of BS. Dana White. I know we talked about with the Zuffa boxing that he has said that he doesn't want to do business. He brought up previously Steven Espinoza, how the two of them, when they worked with Showtime with the whole Floyd Mayweather Conor McGregor thing, ever since then, those two have run each other's names in the mud, don't want to do business with one another. So I don't know. Dana White and Jake Paul, I don't think are on the best of terms. I would say not. So I don't know if they would really ever do business. The one thing that I do think is a little easier is that Jake Paul is now a part of the ESPN Plus. His first couple of fights were with Showtime, though he did well. And then after a couple of low performing fights, the fights with the rematch with Woodley, the Anderson Silva fight, he and Showtime have basically seemed to have parted ways. And now he is with ESPN Plus. The Fury fight was on ESPN Plus. So maybe from that end, maybe the two sides can work together. I do want to throw a note out there, a little breaking the fourth wall kind of note. If you have seen the video feed change quite a bit, it's because we were in the middle, production-wise, of our recording of StreamYard, and it continuously failed. So we're basically using Zoom as a fail-safe for right now.
Yeah, and this is a subliminal message to StreamYard to get their shit together, if you will.
Well, it's not so subliminal now, is it?
I guess I guess so, but you brought up something very interesting in your previous point about the Jake Paul Dana White saga. So I have to mention it. Not only are they not on the best of terms, I don't think they've ever been on the best of terms since the night that they met. So apparently, according to Dana White, he went on an interview with Robbie Fox, and he basically revealed to who was known as Robbie Barstool that the one and only time he ever met Jake Paul was not very pleasant. It was at the Wilder Fury 2 fight in February of 2020. And basically, according to Dana, his seats at MGM that night were messed up. And basically, he noticed that Jake Paul was behind him, and Jake Paul started talking to him. And after Dana White said that his seats were messed up, Jake Paul said something along the lines of, "Oh, keep being famous," or something like that. And that's when Dana White's son, he didn't reveal which son it was, more than likely Dana White III, pretty much tell him who Jake Paul was, and then that's what kind of started the whole firestorm of maybe Jake Paul in Dana White's mind is public enemy number one. We know that that's definitely the case, and as we both know now, Dana White refuses to talk about Jake Paul and will probably continue to refuse to talk about Jake Paul unless it's with an interviewer that he really likes. In this case, Robbie Fox being someone who's apparently on really good terms with White, one of the few journalists that we can actually say is on those terms. So there's a little bit of the Jake Paul Dana White beef that most people don't know that Fox was able to get out of him.
Oh, speaking of media rampage and speaking of Dana, do you think either one of us are going to be in his next hit piece that he's hyping up?
Maybe you. I don't know about me. It seems like I'm the one that's been getting all his questions answered and all that. So who knows? Maybe I'll be on the positive side of the media crusade if there is a positive side of the video. I would not be surprised if I was included in that video, and actually I would be very grateful. As for you, I don't know. I don't know how much coverage of Power Slap you've done or haven't done. But
I haven't done much. I haven't done much other than what I've said on here.
Okay. And so I don't know if they'll include any of this, but I know for sure that from the BJ Penn article, they might include what I tweeted about it. You never know. That would make me famous in some respect. But yeah, that media video should be very interesting.
Say
But
that like you're not
nonetheless,
already famous.
yeah, I'm trying to be as humble about it as I can without giving too much away. But in all seriousness, if I'm included in it or not, this media crusade video will be very interesting. And if I'm included in it, that will be an added bonus. So
But yeah, so Fury and Paul happened. Many rejoices of Jake Paul finally tasting defeat for the first time in combat sports. He was taking on an actual professional boxer, and now we see where Jake Paul goes from here. Zan, we actually had something major happen on the card other than the Paul Fury fight, however. So I made a joke last week, Zan, about if Jake Paul won and if Ilunga Makabu was still the cruiserweight champion and they fought in Saudi Arabia, would you go flying over there for that? Well, looks like that fight isn't going to happen. Badou Jack is now, at the age of 39, a three-weight division champion. He was already a former WBA super middleweight, light heavyweight champion, and now he captures the WBC Cruiserweight Championship, 12th round TKO of Makabu in the co-main event.
yeah, very impressive performance from Badou Jack. I've been watching him fight since 2017 when he was on the Mayweather McGregor undercard. So to see him at 39 years old still beat, high level fighters, high level prospects, whatever you want to call them, is very impressive. And he looked great. He won pretty much every single round of the fight. He may have lost one or two rounds in that 12-round affair. Makabu is really couldn't get off first. It seems like Jack just did the better range, had the better punches, hurt him with a lot more. I'm sure the significant strike count close did favor Badou Jack in certain areas, but just overall, very impressive performance and a guy that you got to keep your eye on as 2023 rolls along because he proved once again that age is just a number, and we'll see how he does now that he is the cruiserweight champion, and there's going to be guys gunning for him, and yeah, we'll see where he goes from here, but definitely a very impressive performance and a fight that I think you and I we're very much looking forward to, and that lived up to the hype as well. So congratulations to Badou Jack on a tremendous win and beating a guy of Macau's caliber. And it's going to be interesting to see where he goes from here. But again, a very impressive performance.
I mean, Zan, just goes to show you that sometimes it's not so much about the age. Sometimes it's about the experience. This whole thing about combat sports being a young man's sport. I mean, it often does ring true, but sometimes, Zan, sometimes experience does win out. And Zan, I think he kind of had the added bonus of the 12th round TKO. I thought, okay, maybe he's going to cruise to a decision here. We were messaging with one another. We said, Badou Jack might actually pull this off. But I thought he was going to just cruise to the decision. And then 12th round happened and he just started walloping. I'm like, oh, okay. Forced the referee to step in.
Yeah, again, a good win for Badou Jack. For the hardcore boxing fans, it's not a surprise he was able to win a fight of that caliber. And again, and as we both keep alluding to, age is just a number, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes.
We also had, Zan, some MMA action over the weekend. Particularly, we had with Bellator, which was the card I was most excited for. Yaroslav Amosov, Zan, 366 days prior to the day that Bellator 291 took place was the day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And that was, of course, Zan, what led to him pretty much putting his MMA career on hold, going to defend his country alongside the likes of Alexander Usyk and Lomachenko and everybody else and a couple of other Ukrainian fighters. But you saw the different pieces and about how they encouraged him to go back. He does, and he puts on a masterclass performance against Logan Storley. Storley was just not in this fight from the beginning.
No, he was not in the fight from the beginning, and what made it impressive was just how Amosov was able to do whatever he wanted. And literally, if you have not watched this fight, go back and watch the highlights because he literally just outclassed him, as Tom alluded to, from the second the fight started. Wrestling, kickboxing, strikes, potential finishes in nearly every round. Whatever he wanted to do to Storley, he did. And it also included in your late fourth round finish, which he was unable to get. It goes to show how seasonedly tough Storley is, how much of a veteran that guy is in Bellator. But Amosov was just simply the better welterweight. And I think we both know how we feel about this. I think Amosov is definitely top 10, but no offense to any of the Bellator pundits out there, but to me, when you compare the level of competition, that Amosov has faced compared to the likes of the UFC's Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards, Hamza Chimaev, Colby Covington, Gilbert Burns, what have you, it's not on the same level. So I do think that while Amosov may be the best 170-pounder in Bellator, he is certainly not the best welterweight in the world. I would argue that he's top 10. Anything above number 6, I think, is incorrect in my opinion. And truly, I think we're not going to know if Amosov really is the best until he makes the transition to the UFC, if he ever does make that transition. But I will say this, pound for pound rankings in the welterweight division, Amosov has earned his rightful place in the top 10, and I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Yeah, so what Zain is also referring to is basically how many Bellator praisers, how many commentators have said that they feel that he is the Yaroslav Amosov by way of his title defense against Logan Storley is the top welterweight in MMA. Like you, Zain, I disagree. Zain, at this point right now, if you're asking me for personal preference, I would say neither welterweight champion is number 1. I think it's still Usman. Usman had won most of that fight against Leon Edwards. I think ultimately, Zain, we are going to find out a true answer to this whole Usman-Edwards saga on March 18th, when those two finally meet in UFC 286 with the title on the line once again. We'll find out who is the true king of the 170-pound division over in the UFC there. I think Amosov doesn't compare to either of those guys. Colby Covington, I still would pick Covington over him.
I would still pick Hamzat over him too, to be honest with you.
You would still pick Hamzat, really?
I would, yeah. I would. I just think his wrestling, if they ever fought, I think Hamzat would out wrestle him for 25 minutes.
And who was the other one you put in the top 5? Because
Gilbert Burns.
Oh yeah, Gilbert Burns. Yeah, I would put Gilbert Burns over Amosov as well. The only one that I would question is Hamzat. But I definitely think that Amosov is a top 10. He's definitely I forgot which Bellator PR person that I follow. It said that he will be, you will hear it from him if Amosov is not in your top 7. I would put him in my top 7. I would just put him at number 5, 6.
It was CJ.
It was CJ, yeah. It was CJ. I would put
and then
5, 6, or 7.
And then Fidel's claim was that Amosov is the best welterweight in the world, and I'm like, as much as I like Bellator, I don't think that's right.
I love Michael, but no.
And then I got totally roasted by Josh Thompson, and his counterclaim to that is that American Top Team is the best gym in the world. And I didn't reply to him, but I'm like, that's not what I tried to say, but okay.
That's not the point, Josh.
Yeah. But yeah, nonetheless, I do think Amosov is one of the best welterweights in the world. Number 1, that remains to be seen. I think that can only be proven if he ever decides to go over to the MMA worldwide leader, the 3 letters, if you will. But for the moment, a good win for Amosov. A lot to be excited about with him. A lot of fresh matchups that you can do.
I'll just say, I wish this card had a little more promotion. I mean, we saw the Jake Paul fight kind of get all the promotion in the world on the UFC card. Now, granted, I think if Dana White had any say, there wouldn't be any promotion of the Jake Paul fight during the UFC card. I think that's more an ESPN call. And
that is what he clarified in his interview with Robbie Fox, that was a full network decision. That was not a UFC decision.
And granted, whenever you watch the UFC on ESPN Plus, it gets annoying seeing the same commercials over and over and over again.
That's true. Unless you know other ways around it. That's true. You're not wrong.
But I just wish, like some more attention was had to Amosov, because I get it. He's not a Kamaru Usman. He's not anything like that. But I mean, he had an incredible story. I think Showtime did an incredible piece on him and talking about the war, talking about defending his country. That video footage of him grabbing the welterweight championship from his mother's basement. PT Carroll. I even tweeted PT sorry. I thought PT did an incredible job.
Yeah,
Talking around
PT. Yeah, PT Carroll's story was good. Nolan King's interview was
yeah.
good. Amanda Guerrero's interview on the podcast was very well done. There were a lot of good pieces about that fight and about Amosov ahead of that fight that should be credited and should be cherished. And yeah, I agree with you on the promotion side. Like, I barely knew that the fight was at 11 a.m. Until I rechecked my email and needed to see the start time of when the fights actually began. And again, and I think we're going to keep saying it, Bellator's promotion is something that they really have to beef up, because unless it's like a huge card with a big name like Fedor, and unless it's a card that's physically in my home state, there's a good chance I don't know when it is. I don't know what time it starts. And unless I have it in front of me, and unless it's grilled in my face over and over and over again, like the UFC is, I won't know when they are, and I won't know when they start. So, maybe that's just my implicit bias, me being a UFC homer at heart. But it's truly how I feel. If there was better promotion, I would know when the Bellator cards were. So
I will say one positive I have is Bellator seems to, because we talk about the UFC's issues of staying in Vegas. Well, Bellator likes to branch out to international waters, and anytime they go over to England or they go over to Ireland, like they did for Bellator 291, I mean, the crowd is just so lively.
yeah, they know how to get out. They know what to get out of an international crowd, and that is something I will give them a ton of credit for. And it's truly awesome to see. So, well, good on them for that. A lot of people came out to see those fights, and Dublin was the place to be that weekend.
All right, Zan. So let's talk about the UFC card that happened this past weekend. So, yeah, that Krylov versus Spann fight was excellent. Now, wasn't it?
Yeah, I see.
So excellent that Dana White confused the main event.
Yeah, I see your sarcasm. So for those who don't know, the Krylov versus Spann main event was canceled mid card because of an issue with Krylov's stomach, which is a bummer. We wish him a speedy recovery. So with that being said, the co-main event between Muniz and Brendan Allen was moved to the main event, and as I correctly predicted last week, Brendan Allen took care of business, won the fight. And yours truly actually did very well on his picks last week, going 7-3. So I'm pretty darn proud of myself for that.
I am hitting myself for not taking Brendan Allen. It was the one fight. It was going well. Everything was going well. I was going undefeated. And then Andre Muniz walked out to Eminem. And I said, oh, no. The Eminem curse strikes.
Well, congratulations on nearly going undefeated. That's something I could not do. The one big one that I lost was the Montana De La Rosa fight, because I didn't think Tatiana Suarez was going to win in the fashion she did. But congratulations. That's probably your best UFC picks record of 2023 so far.
It's my best of all time, I think. I got to give credit to Brendan Allen, though. Just seemed to be in a league above of Muniz. Allen has won, 6 of his last 7 now. His only loss in this 7-fight stretch, Zan, is to Chris Curtis. Prior to that, the losses were loss was to Sean Strickland. And I mean, he definitely, I know there was at one point, Zan, where he kind of struggled. Yeah, the whole idea of maybe Brendan Allen fighting Ian Hearns. He had Sean Strickland loss, which was a little devastating. But he's been on a roll, And now that he's won 4 straight, I think he's getting back, Zan, to that. I mean, I was going to getting back into that contender status. He's ranked number 12 as of Monday, but I could see, Zan, his next fight. I think he can go past the top 10. I think he can, with the right fights and the right performance in his next fight, he can bring himself to top 8, top 7, maybe even top 6.
Yeah, and that leads me to my next question. Who doesn't have a fight booked in that division at the moment?
Then, that's a good question. So obviously we've got Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira, who've got their big rematch coming up in April. So they're both booked. We've got Robert Whitaker, Jared Cannonier, Marvin Vettori, Derek Brunson, Paulo Costa, Sean Strickland, Deleuze. I know Brunson has a fight booked. He's going to be fighting Dricus du Plessis, who's ranked number 10. So they're both out. Ranked above Brendan Allen immediately at number 11 is Imavov. Number 9, Hermanson. Number 8 is Deleuze. 6 is Costa. I mean, do we want to throw Allen to Hermanson?
That's a big step up in competition, but hey, when you beat a guy convincingly by submission, a guy that, a lot of people were high on and a lot of people were betting on, and you're fighting a guy of Hermanson's caliber that's only fought the best in the world and always comes to fight and headlines tons of UFC Apex cards, I think it makes a ton of sense to make that fight either May or June at the Apex as a main event. I really do.
Because that's my first thing I see. I'd see maybe Allen versus Hermanson because he's ranked number 9 right now, or Deleuze because he's ranked number 8. And I don't know if Deleuze wants to fight against somebody who just recently wasn't ranked like Allen was.
Yeah, I don't think Deleuze would want to do that. He doesn't seem like the guy who would want to fight unranked fighters with him being a ranked fighter. But UFC usually do, but don't be surprised if Brendan Allen's next fight is a real 5-round main event and not I'm not going to say a practice, but a watered down 3-round last minute main event. Because by the way, when's the last time you saw a 3-round main event? It's probably been several years. That's probably a stat that.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I want to say the Israel Adesanya Anderson Silva fight from 234, unless there was something during the COVID times.
Well, let's answer this question right now. So you just referenced UFC 234.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was a 3-round fight. So good, good job.
Like I said, the only thing that I could think of that it wasn't that was something that happened during the pandemic.
Definitely, if that's the case, it was without a doubt a non-pay-per-view card.
Yeah.
It had to have been. But nonetheless, very impressive win for Brendan Allen. Very impressive win for Tatiana Suarez. Overall, the card I thought was pretty entertaining given its lack of star power. It was a good hardcore card. And Trevor Peek, man, was very, very impressive, knocking out Eric Gonzalez. Yeah. That was probably the most impressive win outside of the Tatiana Suarez performance. Do you think that was the last we see of the Ghost Pepper in the UFC?
I want to hope not, but there's always that distinct possibility. I will say, though, I'm more hype about Peak now, though. And everyone seems to be. I feel like this is going to bring Peak a lot of momentum. I think Tatiana Suarez gets a lot of momentum back now. She's ranked, I think, at number 13 at this point. And Zan, I only think she's going to zoom her way back up the flyweight ranks quickly towards a title shot.
Yeah, and back to Trevor Peek. Maybe Trevor Peek is peaking at the right time, if you will. But in all seriousness, though, that's one of the most impressive UFC debuts that you'll ever see, no matter who it's against. And he's got some serious power. I'm excited to watch his next fight. It should be very interesting. And I think that was one of the big highlights of one of the OG Apex cards that maybe not a lot of people will remember, but it was one of the highlights that people will look back on for UFC Fight Night 220 for sure. Or better known as UFC Vegas 70. Speaking of the Vegas theme, the UFC will remain in Vegas for the next 2 events. Coming up on Saturday is the long-awaited return of Jon Jones at UFC 285, bulking up to heavyweight, his first appearance in the UFC in 3 years. This time it's in a completely new weight class. Francis Ngannou is out. Ciryl Gane is in. It's the vacant UFC heavyweight championship. Tom, it was leaked by the T-Mobile Arena a couple months ago. Now we're at the week of a Jon Jones fight. Tom, what is your excitement level / nervous level as and this goes out? We will be 3 days away from the long-awaited return of Dana White's pick for the greatest of all time.
And I think that's going to be an interesting debate because I think that debate's going to find itself, rearing its head one way or another after this weekend. I'm pretty excited for it, Zan. We've got 285 this weekend. And then, Zan, the week after that, we've got a card on March 11th that is not going to take place at the Apex. It's going to take place at, the theater?
The theater at Virgin Hotels.
Virgin Hotels, yes. And I was thinking, Zan, that's kind of like one of those old school fight night cards with UFC. When the Spike TV days, the fight nights, when it's at the Palms and such.
Yeah, and we actually got a real answer to that question as to why those fights will be at the Virgin Hotels. It's because the Power Swap finale will be at the UFC Apex that same night. So the UFC will air first, and then the Power Swap finale live on Rumble will air.
Yeah, not on pay-per-view anymore. Not on pay-per-view, on Rumble.
Yeah, so this is not an endorsement, but you can sign up for Rumble today. It's free if you want to watch the first annual Power Slap season finale. Nonetheless, going back to UFC 285, this is a star-studded card. A lot of huge names on this card, of course, topped off with 2 title fights. Tom, we had Dylan Rush on here about a month ago. He does a lot of work. He's currently working for Cage Side Press and also has his own independent brand going on where he does several fighter interviews every single week. I don't know how that kid even sleeps, and just running around with him for 3 hours in Phoenix was a thrill. It was really fun to hang out with him, and he gave his bold prediction that he believes that Ciryl Gane will be the man to not only defeat Jon Jones, but knock out he's supposed the greatest of all time. Tom, stylistically, this is a very interesting matchup. Do you expect this fight to go similarly to Gane versus Francis, or do you think that this fight will be a completely different fight where we don't really know what Jon Jones to expect, but we know for sure that Ciryl Gane will be letting his hands fly the second the fight starts?
I think Gane will definitely let his hands fly. I would say, Zan, this could end up on a similar path to Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane. I think, Zan, this is actually a better matchup for Jon Jones than a Francis Ngannou fight was.
I would agree.
I was very concerned, Zan. If I was sitting here today and we had the fight that we all thought we were going to get in Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou for the heavyweight title, I would have said Ngannou would knock Jones out, kind of on the similar path that Rush was going on, because Ngannou had all that power. But Ngannou is not here anymore in the UFC. So we've got this fight, and Zan, the thing that with Gane, and the thing that from the appearances that we've seen of Jon Jones, granted we haven't seen him as a heavyweight in the octagon, but just thinking about his appearances, how different he looks muscle-wise when it comes to his muscle mass and how he looks and everything. I feel like, Zan, this is going to be kind of a mirror match. I mean, both of these guys, Zan, are tall, lanky individuals, and they both have, great grappling. They both can know how to let their hands fly and have power, have demonstrated power. So I think, Zan, this is going to be, like I said, a better, more interesting matchup. And I think, Zan, a better matchup for Jon Jones in his favor. I obviously I say a better matchup. I think, Zan, I speak for both of us when we say we wish we would have had the Jones versus Ngannou fight, but obviously those are not the stars that we have been blessed with.
No, they're not the stars we've been blessed with. And kind of going off your point, though, it is a big fight. Everybody's going to be out to see Jon Jones, but for the hardcore MMA fans, and you and I know this better than anyone, there's a special vibe around the months of March, November, December. Well, I'm skipping over a month, so let me rephrase. There's a special vibe in the UFC around the months of March, July, November, and December. You could even argue October's in there as well. This feels like one of the first big UFC events of the whole year, and it's super justified. I mean, if you look at not just the Jon Jones fight, but the whole card, Cody Garbrandt versus Trevin Jones. We have Valentina Shevchenko defending her flyweight title against Alexa Grasso. Alexa Grasso is trying to become the first female Mexican UFC champion, which would be unbelievable if that were to happen. You've got the likes of Bo Nickel making his long-awaited UFC debut and fighting a no-slouch opponent in Jamie Pickett. It's a solid card, and it's a card that I think is getting the buzz that it deserves, but this feels bigger than what the promotion is turning out to be. This feels like a real headlining it on the top of the bill, assuming he makes it to Saturday night. I think it's going to be what the UFC is hoping for, and then which is the backup fighter for this fight. You also have Stipe Miocic as a potential next opponent for the winner. The outside of Francis and Francis' departure, as sad as it may be for some, the stars are aligning for the UFC, and this is going to turn out to be a star-studded weekend in Vegas and one of the biggest fights of the year so far. Last weekend, you get Paul versus Fury, and this weekend, you get the return of Jon Bones Jones. So you can't really ask for much more than that.
So, Zan, that now leaves us with, we look at this Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane fight. Jones, by the way, Zan, making a claim that Francis Ngannou basically went running. What do you think of those claims that basically Francis Ngannou left and is basically chickening out by leaving the UFC?
It's an interesting claim coming from a guy who always gets in legal trouble all the time and is quote unquote running from his own demons. So I think that's a little bit counterintuitive on the part of Jones. I had to take a dig at his past history because it's hard not to look at his legacy and not just see the things inside the octagon, but outside of the octagon. But on the other side of that, Jones did say that, Francis was going to do what he was going to do. And that's exactly what he did in terms of him running away. At the same time, it's hard to disagree in a sense, because if you think about it, Jones was out, for 3 years, and obviously you didn't, obviously during those 3 years, Francis was the champion. So in terms of him running from the fight, I could see Jones's point of view, but personally, I do think that, given Jones's past history, he's being a little bit hypocritical when he makes a claim like that, considering how his past has gone, in my opinion.
And Zan, to add on top of it, I think Francis Ngannou, now this is another thing, Zan, where you can argue one way or the other for the same reason, is taking a bigger risk by not taking the Jones fight and by leaving the UFC. Because obviously, we were talking about in January, we're about a month later, Zan, still no word on what's next for Francis Ngannou. It still seems like boxing is going to be the next venture, but there's nothing set in stone. And the question is going to be how much longer we have to wait for Francis Ngannou to get some sort of fight author, whether it be in MMA or whether it be in boxing. As far as the legal troubles goes, then I think personally for me, this is what keeps me debated on whether I truly think Jon Jones is the greatest of all time or not. Because when you look at, say, the other person who is considered a GOAT, George St. Pierre, and doesn't have the undefeated record like Khabib, or the supposed undefeated record. Obviously, Jones has the one disqualification loss. Controversially, he has had quite a few controversial decisions over the last couple of years. I mean, over the last couple of years of his active MMA career, I should say. I think even though there's that, Zan, I think GSP is still the class act figure, where well as Jones as you mentioned, running away from the law a lot, running away from his demons. So my question, Zan, is that is the GOAT status for Jon Jones on the line in this fight? If he wins, does he solidify himself as the GOAT despite the legal troubles, even if you believe it now? If he loses, does he lose the GOAT status?
It's hard to say, but you'd have to factor in the answer of yes, just considering the time he had off. So to not fight for 3 years and what he could have done in those 3 years, and then to come back like not even half of his level of as Jones, not even a decade, I don't think, and that would be kind of a bad knock on his career, knowing that he'll be remembered if he does lose. That his first real loss was to a guy that really didn't have the same caliber of experience of, let's say, a Lyoto Machida or Shogun Hua or something like that.
Certainly the case. So Zan, let's get right to it. I mean, if you want my opinion, Zan, I think it's very well possible. Like, I think the other thing that Jon Jones is missing, which GSP has, is that the second title. I mean, even Jones's own arch nemesis of Daniel Cormier has the second belt to him. Obviously, this would not be for champ status, but if Jones has the ability to say, I technically beat DC twice, it's only technically one time now because of the no contest for 2017, never truly lost in the octagon, have the two titles, because only a handful of fighters have even won championships in two divisions in the UFC, let alone just holding them at the same time.
Correct.
So I think this is the opportunity, Zan, for, despite all the troubles, despite all the, to use an ice cream comparison, all the rocky road Sunday that's around it, this is the chance for Jon Jones to put the cherry on top. Because if he wins a second division championship and he beats Ciryl Gane, especially after this kind of layoff, I think, Zan, that could be, even to those who think GSP, unless somebody is diehard, no, the legal troubles matter, this fight on Saturday night, if he wins, even some of the biggest GSP fans might have to say Jon Jones is the greatest fighter of all time.
Yeah, very well said. Okay, very quickly, just given the interest of time, my prediction for this fight is Jones by decision, 48-47, but very close, and he just ekes out the fourth round, which gives him the win, and maybe runs in the fifth round, but still does enough to win the fight.
Zan, it doesn't seem like it would be a Jon Jones fight if nothing like that happened. A close fight that ends very controversially. So I'm going to actually 100% agree with you, my friend. Jon Jones, by decision, becomes heavyweight champion.
Sounds good to me. Moving right along to the co-main event, we have the return of Valentina Shevchenko, who's taking on Alexa Grasso, someone who's been super underrated in that division for the last several years. Without a doubt, Valentina's toughest test, although Taila Santos would have something to say about that. More than likely, the winner of this fight will get Erin Blanchfield, because in that same interview with Robbie Fox, Dana White alluded to the fact that Taila Santos does not want to come to the United States right now. So more than likely, whoever wins this fight will be fighting Erin Blanchfield next in the next rendition of the Strawweight Championship. Tom, as much as I think Grasso has the tools to win this fight, especially with the grappling, I just think Shevchenko was too good, and he's going to find a way to finish her within the first 3 rounds. I just think Grasso will be overwhelmed, and she won't know what to do. What do you think?
I agree. I actually feel kind of sad because we talked about it in previous weeks, Sam, that we feel like Taila Santos did beat Valentina Shevchenko in their fight, that she should get some sort of rematch. Kind of sucks that she ended up getting injured, that Erin Blanchfield had to fight with Jessica Andrade instead when Santos was supposed to main event. And then basically, as you mentioned, she doesn't want to come to the United States right now, which is just complicating things. Feels sad because it feels like she should be in there. However, this might be a little bit of a controversial statement, but I think the pressure's on Shevchenko in this fight because of that horrible performance against Santos.
I do too, and if she doesn't win, then the rematch isn't saved that the UFC arguably wants. So Yeah, she's in a must-win situation for sure. Because then, if she loses, you're in a bit of a kerfuffle. Because what do you do? Do you make Rossa versus Shevchenko too? Probably not. So more than likely, Shevchenko. The pressure is on her to win the fight. But nonetheless, I do think she wins. And again, as I alluded to, I think it'll take her 3 rounds to do it at the very least. And I think she'll defend her belt.
Yeah. Do you think, Zan? I mean, credit to Grasso. She's on a 4 fight win streak, won 5 of her last 6. Her only loss in this span, Zan, is to Carla Esparza, who's a 2-time strawweight champion. Do you think, Zan, Shevchenko is in a situation, they said high pressure, must win? Do you think it's must finish?
No, I think as long as she wins the fight and does it impressively, even if it's a one-sided decision, I think it'll solidify her as not only the best flyweight ever, but it'll give her a chance to potentially rematch Tyler Santos whenever she's ready to fight, or have her fight Nunes once again, which, who really wants to see that at this point, given how the previous fights between the pair have gone. But at this point, she's run out of so many challengers that you have very few options left for her. And ultimately, I think she could retire with her only losses being to Nunes, which would be very impressive. And I really don't think we're going to see much of Shevchenko any longer, as there are fresh matchups, which Erin Blanchfield might end up being the freshest matchup possible if the UFC can get it done.
Okay. So if you don't want to see Shevchenko Nunes, and it seems like Dana White and company don't want to see that fight happen too, and let's say Shevchenko gets past Erin Blanchfield, given the fact that Erin Blanchfield beat Jessica Andrade, who was gunning for the strawweight title, let me throw a super fight out there, a different kind of super fight. What if we saw Weili Zhang move up and challenge Shevchenko for the flyweight?
Well, this is a fight that Dana's been hinting at for years. And when the opportunity is there, there's no way they won't jump on it. That's what I'll say.
That my hint was, Zan, was if Shevchenko rebounds in this and beats Erin Blanchfield, considering Andrade lost that fight to Blanchfield, I think the opportunity is coming much sooner than we think it is.
Agreed. Nonetheless, we're both picking Shevchenko to defend her strawweight title. It should be hopefully a very impressive performance for her, as she always puts on masterpieces every single time she fights, minus that lackluster performance in Singapore as June, but nonetheless, Tom and I.
No, we both agree. But what kind of do you see a finish? Did you say third round or?
Yeah, third round TKO. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I kind of want to agree with you, but this is also Valentina. Actually, you know what? No, I'll go 2 for 2 with you. I'm going to agree. Third round TKO. I was very tempted to say maybe second in the hopes of getting a bigger rebound, but I'll go with the third.
I think Rosso surprisingly wins the first round, and Shevchenko will go back to the corner and realize what adjustments she'll need to make, and the rest of the fight will be completely her way, in my opinion.
All right. On the undercard, well, not undercard, the rest of the main card, the non-title fights. You got Jeff Neal taking on Shavkat Rakhmonov. Zan, this is, I think, a huge opportunity for Shavkat. Looking at his previous opponent history, he fought Neil Magny, and I think Jeff Neal is another step up in competition. If not Zanded at a minimum, just at the same level. I think this is a big opportunity for him. For Magny, for Neal, maybe kind of he lost to Stephen Thompson at the end of 2020, lost to Neil Magny in 2021. He has rebounded with wins over Santiago Ponzinibbio, Vicente Luque. Big things for the winner of this matchup, I'd say.
Yeah, no offense, but I do think Jeff Neal is a gatekeeper at 170 pounds, and this is a perfect matchup for Shavkat to go in there and beat a big name on pay-per-view.
Well, I was going to say, is this a must-win for Neal, or is this a must-win for either competitor?
I think it's a must-win for Neal more than Shavkat. I think Shavkat could lose a very close decision, and his stock won't go down at all. And if you think about it, if you look at them stylistically, they fight very similar. So I think it'll be a very entertaining fight, a potential fight of the night candidate, no doubt about it, as well as the fight between former champion Cody Garbrandt and Trevin Jones too.
For sure. What's going to be your prediction? Because I'm going to go with Rakhmonov.
Yeah, I like Rachmanov to win in the second round by knockout. I think he stops Jeff Neal early in the second round.
Let's see. I mean, he's got a very big finish history. Um, I'm gonna agree with Rachmanov wins. I think it's gonna be a little different. I'm gonna say just like the Neil Magny fight, second round submission.
Okay, that's a solid pick. So you're going to go with the consistent trend, if you will. But overall, great fight. Again, as I alluded to just a moment ago, I do think that is a potential fight of the night candidate in a fight that I think a lot of people are sleeping on, just given how big the top two fights on the main card are. So there's that. So we're both picking Rachmanov. So far, we have the same identical picks and are 3 for 3.
Mm-hmm. Mateusz Gamrot going to be taking on Jalen Turner. This is going to be the let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th fight for the former KSW star. He is coming off of the loss to Beneil Dariush, which snapped the 4-fight win streak. And then you've got Jalen Turner, who always knows how to entertain. He's on a 5-fight win streak himself. Although I think this is, no disrespect to somebody like Brad Riddell, this is probably his biggest test, or at least his biggest test since facing Vicente Luque. So, do you see this being must win for Jalen Turner or Mateusz Gamrot?
Oh, Mateusz Gamrot for sure. He wants to stay in that title conversation. He lost in the main event at UFC Fight Night last June in a very close fight, a fight that was hotly debated in terms of the scorecards. I think both of us had Gamrot winning that fight anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fight that he probably really wants to have back at some point in the future. But I do think that it's a must win for Mateusz Gamrot. If Jalen Turner loses, while that will snap a 5-fight win streak, I think it goes to show that Jalen Turner can hang with the best in the division. I do think Gamrot wins in a very close split decision, and it goes the distance.
Yeah, I know some people are a little harsh in saying that Jalen Turner might be on the cut list of this loss, but that's sorry, not Jalen Turner, that's Jamie Pickett, which I'll get to in just a little
Yeah,
bit.
I was like, wait, hasn't Jalen Turner won a bunch in a row? That doesn't.
Yeah, that's why I was confused when I saw the win streak. I'm like, wait a minute, no, he's one fight. I'm like, oh no, that's Jamie Pickett. But yeah, no, this is gonna be an entertaining fight. And as much as Mateusz Gamrot has his wins, as much as he was a star in case, I think Jalen Turner and his power and such and his body, I think he's gonna surprise. And but I don't know if I would go with a decision. Are you saying Gamrot by decision?
Yeah,
Oh, you're saying
Gamrot
Gamrot.
by decision.
Man, this is a tough one for me. You know what? I'm gonna go Turner by split decision.
Okay, so we're split on that.
We're split on that, but we agree on a split decision.
Agreed. Two more fights I wanted to go over with on this card, if that's cool. I think Cody Garbrandt is in a must-win situation on Saturday. What do you think?
Yeah, that's the other name. So that's the other name I was hearing about, a must-win situation. Cody Garbrandt has lost 4 of his last 5. And then Trevin Jones, I mean, he's lost his last 3 to Kakramanov, to Bashvarat, and Barcelos. Zan, I think this is pro wrestling style loser leaves town. I think loser gets cut in this one.
Yeah, and considering how much of a star Cody Garbrandt once was, how he beat Dominic Cruz to win the bantamweight title, it's sad to see his fall from grace. But can Cody Garbrandt's chin still hold up? I think for this one fight, it can. I think he wins impressively, and I think he wins in the first round.
Yeah, I think that's what the UFC, honestly, Zan, if you want my honest opinion, is looking for. Giving him a fighter that, that they know he could hold his own against. I mean, Zan, you look at the losses, the 5 of the last 6. Yeah, I mean, it looks bad, but Zan, Kai Kara France, Rob Font, Pedro Munoz, and TJ Dillashaw.
Yeah,
bad names.
Yeah, and all of those guys are either title challengers or former champions, with Dillashaw being the lone former champion on that list.
Now, that being said, if he loses to somebody like Trevin Jones, then yeah, it looks bad for him. And Zan, you might even have to consider that Garbrandt might have to consider the R word that never really sticks around in MMA, but is always flying out there.
Yeah, he easily could, but nonetheless, I like Cody Garbrandt here. Must-win situation against a prospect that struggled as of late, but is a guy that the UFC probably still has high hopes for. I like Cody Garbrandt in that spot, and I think he wins, and I think he wins impressively. It should be a good fight.
Mm-hmm. And we've also got, by the way, Zan, we got for the main card, we got Bo Nickal's a mixed martial arts debut. I mean, UFC debut, pardon me, taking on Jamie Pickett, who we already established. Jamie Pickett. I love Jamie Pickett. He was an entertaining interview when I got to interview him for the Contender Series a while back. However, obviously, he hasn't had the greatest UFC tenure, and this is kind of like, as Jamie Pickett is about to go out to the UFC, he's being fed to the wolves. He's being fed to the young guy.
Yeah, this is a typical UFC matchmaking move. We've seen it several times over the years. Most notably with BJ Penn and Clay Guida, so this is nothing new. But I think this is a spot where if he doesn't win this fight, he's gonna be Jamie Pickett, that is, he's gonna be in trouble. But knowing how high the UFC is on Bo Nickel coming out of Penn State and the story that he has with him being, an all-American wrestler and all that, and being one of the hottest prospects in MMA, there's no way that Bo Nickel can't go out on a big stage and deliver. He's going to deliver in this fight, and I think he's going to win in devastating fashion. I think it's only going to take him less than 4 minutes to do it, too.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a first-round submission for Bo Nickel.
I think so, too. I'm going to be more specific and say first-round arm triangle. What do you think?
I wouldn't doubt that for a second. Zan, looking at the rest of the prelim card, by the way, there is one other fight that I have my eye on. Zan, I do hear a train coming in the background. It's my Dricus du Plessis train taking on Derek Brunson. It's such a big step up, but I'm so excited for this. I think this fight will go one of two ways, Zan. Either Dricus du Plessis will get Derek Brunson out in the first couple of rounds, or he'll tire out quickly and Derek Brunson will get the decision.
I don't have a pick in this fight, but I can tell you this. I think one of these two guys is getting finished before the final bell. That's what I think. I don't know which side to lean on, but I just know that someone is getting a finish over the other. If you were to put a bullet in my head, which would be really bad, literally, but figuratively, if you were to put a bullet in my head, I would say Dricus du Plessis wins the fight, but Derek Brunson gives him hell and back for most of it. As I just alluded to, I don't have a side to pick, and I'm going to stick with that. But I do think that someone is getting finished in this fight. So for a best bet, per se, I would say this fight does not go the distance. Or if you like the over 1.5 rounds, I would side with that too.
For best bets, I mean, Zan, by the way, just to throw out how good this card is, I mean, Louis Krasnov is going to be starting off the card, the early prelims. You got Jessica Penne on here. Ian Gary is going to be making an appearance. The Cuban Missile Crisis, Julian Marquez taking on Marc-Andre Barriault. Viviana Araujo taking on Amanda Ribas. That should be absolutely fun. For best bets, I'm going to say...
I have to correct you. It's actually Amanda Ribas. The R is silent.
Yeah. Pardon me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Rachmanov as a money line. I would say... Yeah, Rachmanov for a money line. I would say Mateusz Gamrot, Jalen Turner goes the distance. And yeah, Zan, I wouldn't mind putting some money on a Dricus du Plessis finish.
That's my would be Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane 3.5 rounds. I really like it, just given Jones's previous fight history. Valentina Shevchenko by finish. And I also like Bo Nickel to win inside the distance pretty easily.
I like that. I like these bets. It's definitely going to be a very fun card to watch. Zan, going off of that, just a couple of news items, by the way, to finish off our show. The long-awaited, anticipated fight by Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia, Zan, is official for April 22nd.
Yeah, it's done. It's official. April 22nd, T-Mobile Arena, live on Showtime and DAZN pay-per-view. Couldn't ask for a better fight at this moment for boxing. As we always say, boxing gets in its own way, but they finally got a deal done for that fight. It's going to be awesome. I don't have an early prediction for the fight, but I will say that. But I will say that it's going to be a hot ticket. So when his tickets go on sale, you want to snatch them up immediately. Price skyrocket, and Las Vegas be the place to be in a month's time. One of the biggest fights in boxing of the year. It should be a star-studded weekend with celebrities and hopefully a really good undercard to appetize boxing purists. So overall, happy to see the fight get done, and it should be awesome, and the build-up should be even better.
Yeah, I don't have a fight prediction either, Zan, but I think this is just going to be a really fun fight, and it's one that's long anticipated. Zan, my other question, did you know that Floyd Mayweather fought over the weekend?
I did, but I heard about it.
If you saw our episode last week, it didn't seem like we did.
Yeah, I heard about it after our episode from a week ago recorded, but it's whatever, man. He's just trying to make some extra cash, and good for him. Made the London crowd happy, made a bunch of money, got to still say that he was TBE or whatever. He's gonna do whatever he wants. He likes these one-off fights. Japan, London, wherever non-US country he can go to, he's down to go. So good for him, and I'm sure that the guy he fought got a nice little payday himself. And there's the clown show for you.
I was gonna say, that's Aaron Chalmers. That's a Bellator veteran, my friend, who's more known for his reality show appearances. Yes, but that's still a Bellator veteran.
And I wasn't trying to discount his name either. But if you're not an MMA purist like us, and you see the name Aaron Chalmers, your first reaction is, who the hell is that? Then not trying to discount his name, but I wasn't going to say Aaron Chalmers, and the people in my mention say, who the hell is that? And so for you to give an introduction,
who's that guy?
Yeah, absolutely. But
nonetheless, speaking of Connor, sorry, Stan, I just couldn't pass up that perfect transition. That's our last story for the evening. So Michael Chandler is accusing Conor McGregor of being drunk and handing out shots of Proper 12 on the Tough 31 set. And you've got Dana basically saying, when asked about the cuts that we talked about last week, that basically Conor will get his way with something. So thank you, Dana White, for confirming something that we already knew.
Thanks to Dana White for that. And as Dana White alluded to at the post-fight press conference for UFC Vegas 70, is that Conor's going to get some things that he wants, and he literally said it with a straight face, and he tried not to laugh. But there you go. That's Conor McGregor being Conor McGregor, and
I will say, there is one thing I will say. I hope the tough fighters who did get cut do get some form of compensation for it. I mean, Loic, it was supposed to be on there, and now he's going to be opening up the early prelim card for 285. I think Chris Montano was supposed to be on the tough.
He was, and I was lucky enough to see him in person when he fought Sean O'Malley at UFC 264.
Yeah, I really hope that Chris Montano, for what he did with that fill-in fight, he gets the chance to, do something, get a fight night fight booked or something like that after having to go through that. I just feel bad. But other than that, I mean, we got a really exciting card this weekend, Stan. I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait. And for those of you who don't know, the card is going to begin a little earlier. It's a 4:30 p.m. Eastern start, with the early prelims taking place on ESPN Plus, followed by the televised prelims on ABC and ESPN, and then of course transitioning over to pay-per-view at 10 p.m. Eastern. So it's time to wrap it up. This was a whirlwind of a show to get through, but we got it done. As for a little review, of course, we have UFC 285 on Saturday. Again, that's headlined by Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane for the vacant UFC Heavyweight Championship, which means another chapter in the UFC Heavyweight title history will take place, whether or not it's an and new for Jon Jones or an and new for Ciryl Gane. And then, of course, we had news and notes later in the episode. And then, of course, the next few weeks for the UFC are going to be jam-packed, of course, with the UFC Fight Night card at the Virgin Hotels in Las Vegas. But nonetheless, that's going to do it for the MMA Outsiders. I'm Zain Bando. That's Tom Albano. Again, you can find my work over at bjpen.com. And you can follow me at SamBando99 across Twitter and Instagram. You can follow the show at MMA Outsiders ETB across Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And you can also follow MT The Bench Network wherever you get your podcast. More than likely, though, on YouTube is where you'll find everything from the weekly sports show to Fruity Cereal and so much more. And yeah, that's going to do it for another episode. We're 2 episodes away from episode 30, if you can believe it, Tom.
No, I can't. By the way, you can find my work over at Fan-Sided MMA. Follow me at Thomas J. Albano. And don't forget to follow the ETV Network across social media as well at ETV Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok. So for those of you who crave your little TikTok craze, yes, we're on there too.
Yeah. As am I. You can find me on TikTok under the same handle at ZanBando99. So that's across Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok as well.
Perfect. All right, Zan. Let's end this whirlwind of a episode week for us. For Zain Bando, I'm Tom Albano. Enjoy the fights this weekend. We'll see you next time.
And of course, before we get out of here, we have one message for everyone. Be Joe Piper.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.